Victoria
This is what
Vale,
happens
the
when you
billionaire
cross me.
CEO of Vale Automotive, had my toolbox dumped across her garage floor while my 8-year-old son watched from the
Search
tow truck.
everything. Men like
Search
him don't bring
everything,
sick
she
children
said.
unless they
Men
want
like him
sympathy.
don't bring sick children unless they want sympathy. Eli pulled his hospital bracelet under his sleeve like being sick was something to hide. 5 minutes earlier, 7 luxury mechanics had laughed when I said her dead Lamborghini had a $4 problem. Then I removed one cheap signal-blocking tag from the key, and the engine roared to life. The room went silent, but Victoria didn't thank me.
You're a thief!
She called me a thief, and Derek Shaw laughed when a guard knocked Eli's toy Lamborghini into an oil pan. I wiped that toy clean with my sleeve, handed it back to my son, and walked out not knowing that same $4 tag was hiding the secret that would destroy them all. Before we get there, take a quick second to join the community by hitting subscribe and tell me where you're watching from. The first time my son watched a room full of grown men laugh at me, he was sitting in the passenger seat of my tow truck with a hospital bracelet tucked around his skinny wrist and a plastic Lamborghini in his lap. I had pulled into Vale Automotive just after 9 that morning, past the mirrored glass walls and the black marble sign that looked like it cost more than my house. And there it sat in the middle bay under bright white lights, a dead yellow Lamborghini surrounded by 7 men in clean uniforms. 7 luxury mechanics, 3 days, and nobody had made that car do more than click and sulk. I was only there to tow it out. That was the job on the dispatch. Exotic vehicle, no start, transport to private storage. I had Eli with me because the hospital had called before sunrise to move his scan up. Mrs. Wilkins next door had the flu, and I couldn't leave an 8-year-old with a heart monitor alarm setting off every time he climbed stairs by himself. So I brought him. I told him to stay in the truck, keep his seatbelt on, and not worry about anything. He nodded like kids do when they're trying to make things easier for you, then asked if the Lamborghini was really broken or just rich people broken. I almost smiled at that. Almost. The smiling stopped the second I got out. One of the mechanics looked down at my boots like mud had walked in by itself. Another glanced at my old wrecker through the glass doors and said, not quiet enough, "That thing pass inspection?" Somebody else laughed when Eli leaned forward to see the car better, his bracelet sliding out from under his sleeve. Then Derek Shaw turned around, and the air in my chest changed. I knew that face. Cleaner now, heavier around the jaw, expensive watch, same little smile that never reached his eyes. He had been there years ago when my life came apart at another dealership, and he looked at me like he had been waiting for me to fall this far. Before I could say a word, Victoria Vale came through the side door in a dark suit, heels clicking on the polished floor like she owned the sound itself. She didn't ask my name. She looked at the truck, then at my son, then back at me and said, "Did you bring the child for sympathy, Mr. whatever your name is? Or is this just something poor men learn, where to place the camera?" The room got quiet for half a second, the kind of quiet that gives people permission to laugh afterward. I didn't answer her. I just looked over at Eli and I watched my boy pull his sleeve down over that hospital bracelet with 2 small fingers, careful and slow, like being sick had suddenly become something shameful. I walked toward the Lamborghini because my hands needed a job before my mouth got us both in trouble. The car was beautiful in the coldest way, all sharp edges and money, but dead cars don't care what they cost. I saw the key on the work cart beside it, and I saw the cheap little black tag hanging off the ring, the kind they sell near checkout counters for a few dollars, advertised to block signals. No factory technician would leave that thing on a key while chasing an immobilizer problem, not one who knew what he was doing. I picked it up and said, "This might be your issue." One of the mechanics snorted. Derek stepped closer, smiling wider now. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "this man used to think he was a mechanic before grief made him sloppy." That one landed where he meant it to. I heard Eli shift in the truck. Victoria folded her arms and looked me over like I was something leaking on her floor. "Fine," she said. "You get 2 minutes. If this vehicle starts, I'll listen. If it doesn't, I report you for interfering with private property, and you and your son leave before security has to teach you manners." I looked at the key in my palm, then back at Eli. His face was pale behind the windshield. He pressed that broken toy Lamborghini against his chest and whispered through the half-open window, "Dad, please don't let them laugh again." So I reached for the door handle, with 7 experts watching, 1 billionaire waiting to punish me, and my little boy trying to disappear inside his own sleeves. I took the key in both hands because I didn't want anybody saying later that I had hidden something in my palm. The cheap black tag swung from the ring like a little piece of nothing, the kind of thing people buy without thinking and lose in a junk drawer a week later. I unclipped it, set it on the work cart, and heard one of the mechanics whisper, "Unbelievable," like I'd just insulted his religion. I didn't look at him. I slid into the Lamborghini, and for 1 second the smell of that car hit me, leather and cold metal and money. But underneath all that, it was still just a machine waiting for the right question. I cycled the ignition once, waited for the immobilizer light to blink out, pressed the brake, held the key steady, and reset the sequence the way I'd done on dozens of stubborn cars that cost less than one of its wheels. Behind me, I could hear Derek breathing through his nose, amused and ready. I could feel Victoria standing there with her arms folded, already deciding what my failure would cost me. Then I turned the key, and that dead Lamborghini fired so hard the whole glass bay seemed to jump. The engine cracked awake, caught clean, and settled into a low, angry growl that ran through the floor and up my boots. 7 experts stopped smiling at the exact same time. That sound should have been the end of it. A decent room would have gone quiet, and then somebody would have said, "Well, I'll be damned." But rich rooms don't always know what to do when the wrong man is right. I stepped out and left the engine running. Victoria's face had changed, but not in the way I expected. She didn't look relieved. She looked exposed. Her eyes moved from the car to her mechanics, then to me, and I watched her understand that every dollar she had spent in that room had just been embarrassed by a tow driver with cracked knuckles and a sick kid waiting outside. Derek saw it too, and he moved fast. "No," he said, sharp enough to cut through the engine noise. "That was staged." He pointed at me before anybody could think. He planted that tag or knew it was there. Nobody walks in cold and solves this in 30 seconds. The words were so stupid I almost laughed, but Victoria turned toward me like stupid had given her something solid to hold. "Search the truck," she said. Just like that. No thank you, no apology, no question. 2 security guards came at me while the Lamborghini sat there running behind them, proof shaking the air and somehow not counting. I said, "My son is in that truck." Victoria didn't blink. "Then he can watch you cooperate." They opened my doors, pulled out my bag, my jumper pack, my receipts, Eli's hospital folder, everything. One guard dumped my toolbox straight onto the polished floor. Sockets rolled under a cabinet. My father's old ratchet skidded across the tile. Eli climbed down, despite me telling him not to, his face white, and when his little toy Lamborghini slipped from the seat, the guard's boot clipped it into a shallow oil pan by the bay. Eli bent to get it, quick and embarrassed, like the toy had done something wrong. Derek laughed under his breath and said, "Careful, kid. Your dad might bill us for that, too." I don't remember crossing the floor. I just remember my hand closing so tight around that oily little car that the broken wheel pressed into my palm. For a second, I could see Derek's face from years ago. That same smile. That same pleasure in making a man smaller while other people watched. My boy was kneeling there beside the oil pan, trying not to cry in front of strangers. I wanted to put Derek through that glass wall. I wanted it so clearly it scared me. Instead, I wiped the toy with my sleeve until the yellow paint showed again, and I put it back in Eli's hands. "Get in the truck, buddy," I said, and somehow my voice came out even. Victoria finally spoke, cold as the tile under my tools. She said Vale Automotive would not be paying the tow bill, that I was banned from every property her company owned, and that any further contact would be treated as harassment. I gathered my tools one by one while the engine I had started kept running behind me. And just before I shut my toolbox, I saw Derek pick up that cheap black tag from the cart and slip it into his jacket pocket instead of throwing it away. He thought nobody noticed. But I notice small things. That's always been my problem, and sometimes it's the only thing that saves me. By morning, the video had already gone farther than I ever could have chased it. Somebody had clipped it clean the way cowards do. They showed Victoria accusing me. They showed security around my truck. They showed Eli standing there with his hospital bracelet half hidden under his sleeve. What they did not show was the Lamborghini roaring to life after I took off that $4 tag. The caption said, "Tow driver uses sick kid to scam billionaire CEO." And by breakfast, my phone was full of strangers calling me things my son was old enough to read. I turned the screen face down, but Eli had already seen enough. He sat at the kitchen table pushing cereal around with his spoon, his toy Lamborghini beside the bowl. Before noon, 2 regular accounts canceled. One text said, "Sorry, Caleb, we can't be associated with fraud allegations." Associated. Like I was something that might rub off on them. Then the hospital called. I stepped into the hallway because Eli always listened when that number came up, even when he pretended not to. The woman used that careful voice people use when they're about to move your life around and want credit for sounding gentle. Eli's surgery deposit deadline had been moved up. Another child was waiting for the same slot, and if we couldn't confirm payment soon, they would release it. I thanked her because that is what poor people do when they are being crushed politely. When I came back, Eli was watching me too closely. He asked, "Do people think you're a bad dad because of me?" I told him no. I told him people online didn't matter. Then I went into the bathroom, turned the faucet on full blast, sat on the edge of the tub, and pressed both hands over my mouth until I could breathe right again. That afternoon, Derek called from a private number. He said the video could disappear and the complaint could soften if I signed one statement saying the Lamborghini had started because of prior diagnostic work, not because of me. I looked at Eli's sneakers lined up under the couch, one lace shorter than the other, and I knew what that signature might buy us. Maybe time. Maybe the surgery slot. I still said no. Derek went quiet, then laughed once and said, "Pride is expensive, Mercer." That night, after Eli fell asleep, I opened my email and found a notice from my towing insurance provider. My policy was suspended pending fraud review. I went back to Vale Automotive the next morning with no tow truck contract left to protect, and no patience left for being polite. I parked across the street because security had already been told not to let me through the gate, then walked in carrying a folder with screenshots of the clipped video, the canceled contracts, and the insurance notice folded on top like the punchline. The receptionist looked at me the way people look at a stain they've been told not to touch. She said Miss Vale was unavailable. I said I wasn't leaving until somebody released the full security footage from that garage. So they made me wait in the lobby, right under a giant portrait of Lionel Vale, Victoria's dead father. He was standing beside that same yellow Lamborghini, one hand on the roof, smiling like a man who still believed machines told the truth if people listened close enough. Derek came out after 20 minutes, not Victoria. He had that soft smile on, the one that never wasted energy because it knew other people's pain would do the work for him. "Caleb Mercer," he said, like we were old friends bumping into each other at church. "Still chasing proof nobody asked for." Hearing my full name in his mouth took me right back to the dealership years before, back when I still had a clean uniform and a future. I had found an electrical defect in a luxury model, the kind that could cut power at highway speed. I wrote the report. I documented it clean. Derek stole the file, changed the conclusion, and when I tried to go over his head, he told management I was unstable. My wife had just died. I was sleeping 3 hours a night, raising Eli on vending machine coffee and hospital cafeteria sandwiches. They used that against me. By the time I understood what had happened, I had lost the job, the savings, And the kind of reputation a working man only gets once. Derek stepped close enough that the receptionist couldn't hear. "Men like you don't lose because we lie," he said. "You lose because nobody believes you." I didn't swing. I looked past his shoulder at Lionel Vale's portrait because my hands needed somewhere else to put the anger. That was when I saw it. Lionel was holding the Lamborghini key in the picture, plain as anything. Same black fob, same silver ring, but no cheap signal-blocking tag. My stomach went still. That tag had been added after Lionel died. Anna Reed followed me out through the glass doors before I made it back to the sidewalk. She didn't call my name loud. She said it like she was afraid the building itself might hear her. "Mr. Mercer." I turned around, and she stood there with a tablet hugged against her chest, looking over one shoulder at the lobby. She was Victoria's assistant, the quiet woman who had watched security dump my tools and said nothing. I didn't have much kindness ready for her. She knew it too, because she stopped 2 steps away and kept her voice low. "That car is supposed to start at the Vale Foundation Gala Friday night," she said. "Lionel Vale's memorial event. Donors, press, board members, everyone." I looked back through the doors at that giant portrait of the dead man and the yellow Lamborghini. Anna swallowed. "If it fails on stage, they'll say Miss Vale can't protect his legacy. The board already thinks she's too emotional about him. They'll use it to push her out." I wanted to tell her good. I wanted to say Victoria Vale could stand in front of a room and feel what it was like to be laughed at while her whole life got measured by people who already decided she was small. But the thought didn't sit right. I knew a setup when I saw one. I had lived inside one until it took my career, my savings, and my son's easy childhood. Derek wasn't just kicking a poor man because he enjoyed the sound. He was building something bigger, and I had been useful because nobody important would believe me. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. Anna's fingers tightened around the tablet. "Because Derek requested private access to Mr. Vale's Lamborghini 2 nights before it died. No cameras in the bay for 26 minutes. He said it was a sensor calibration." She looked down at her shoes. "I should have reported it." "Why didn't you?" I asked, and it came out harder than I meant it to. She gave a small laugh with no humor in it. "People with mortgages learn silence." I thought about Eli hiding his bracelet. I thought about my toolbox scattered on their floor. "Silence is how men like Derek get promoted," I said. Anna flinched, but she didn't walk away. She slid one folded photo from inside her tablet case and handed it to me. "This is from Lionel's old service records. I don't know what it means." In the photo, Lionel's original key lay on a workbench, with a tiny scratched mark near the metal edge, almost like a notch. I drove home with that picture on the seat beside me, knowing the woman who had helped ruin me might be walking into the same trap that buried me years before. The tow truck was gone before I finished my first cup of coffee. I woke to the sound of chains outside, heavy and final, and for one stupid second I thought somebody needed help. That was what that sound had meant to me for years. Trouble on the road, a car in a ditch, some stranger waiting for me to show up and make a bad morning smaller. Then I looked through the front window and saw a repo rig backed up to my wrecker, its yellow lights turning slow across my yard. My truck sat there with my name still painted on the door, Dawson Recovery. The letters Hannah had helped me choose back when we thought owning half a business meant we were climbing. The driver was already hooking the front axle. Eli came out onto the porch in his socks, hair flat on one side, oxygen monitor still taped under his shirt from the night before. He didn't ask what was happening. Kids know when not to ask. They just watch the adults fail to stop things. The repo driver was a decent man, which somehow made it worse. He kept his eyes low and said, "I'm sorry, Mr. Mercer. The lender accelerated after the insurance suspension. Missed payments triggered the clause." He said clause like it was a weather report, like nobody had chosen it and nobody could stop it. I signed where he pointed. My hand would not hold the pen steady, so my signature came out broken in the middle. The driver pretended not to notice. Eli stepped down from the porch and walked to my open toolbox sitting near the office door. He took his little yellow Lamborghini from his hoodie pocket, the one still oily around the wheel wells no matter how much I had wiped it, and placed it inside beside my sockets. "For the truck," he said, "in case they need payment." I closed my eyes for half a breath, then opened them because fathers do not get to disappear just because something hurts. The chains tightened. My wrecker rolled backward, slow, like a thing being dragged out of my chest. By 10 o'clock, I had no truck, no active insurance, no way to take calls, and no honest answer for the dispatcher who kept texting, "You available?" At noon, a courier dropped off a cease and desist from Victoria Vale's legal team, accusing me of defamation for asking publicly about the full garage footage. They called my statements malicious and damaging to the Vale brand. I laughed once when I read that, not because it was funny, but because their brand had more protection than my son's heart. An hour later, my landlord left a voicemail. He said he hated to ask, but his wife had seen the fraud allegations online, and with rent already late, he needed to know if there was something he should be worried about. I stood in the towing yard after dark, looking at the empty rectangle where my truck used to sit, with Eli's surgery slot slipping away and our house suddenly feeling borrowed. That was when headlights swept across the fence. A black car stopped by the gate, and Victoria Vale stepped out alone. Victoria Vale didn't come with cameras. That was the first thing I noticed. No lawyer stepping out behind her, no security guard, no assistant holding a tablet like a shield. Just Victoria, in a dark coat, standing outside my fence after the sun had gone down, with my tow yard half empty behind me, and the place where my truck used to sit looking like a missing tooth. She didn't say she was sorry. People like her don't reach for sorry first. She looked past me at the chains, the oil spots, the little office with one light buzzing over the door, and said, "Why do you think my father's car was sabotaged?" Not hello, not I heard about your truck, not your son. Just the car, because that was the only pain she knew how to name out loud. I opened the gate but didn't invite her inside. "First truth," I said. "You let grown men humiliate a sick child because being wrong in front of mechanics embarrassed you." Her face tightened like I had slapped the polish off it. She looked toward my office window where Eli's drawing of my old truck was taped crooked to the glass. For a second her mouth moved and nothing came out. Then she fixed herself again, shoulders back, voice flat. "I came for facts, Mr. Mercer." "Then start there," I said. "Your people searched my truck in front of my boy. They dumped my tools. One of your guards kicked his toy into oil, and Derek laughed at him. That happened before any fact you're asking about." She looked down at the gravel between us. Not long, but long enough. I took Anna's photo from my jacket and handed it over. "This is your father's original key." She stared at the picture, and her thumb went right to the tiny scratched mark near the edge like she already knew it. "The tag I removed wasn't on that key when Lionel was alive," I said. "Somebody added it after. Cheap signal blocker, $4 maybe. Easy thing to blame, easy thing for idiots to laugh at. But it was too obvious. It was planted so everyone would look at the simple problem and miss the deeper one." Victoria didn't answer right away. The wind pushed a dry leaf against her shoe and she didn't move it. Finally, she said, softer, "That Lamborghini was the last car my father drove before he died. I promised him I'd start it at the gala. Not for the board, not for the press. For him." I should have felt something generous then, but all I could see was Eli hiding his bracelet. "Rich people always think promises are private," I said, "until poor people end up paying for them." She reached into her coat and pulled out a folded check. "For Eli's surgery," she said. "No conditions." I didn't touch it. There are always conditions when money shows up before truth. Her eyes hardened. "You are a proud man." I stepped closer to the fence. Pride is the only thing Derek didn't manage to steal. She stood there with that check in her hand, useless for once. Then she turned toward her car, took out her phone, and said, "Anna, release the original garage footage. All of it." The full footage came out the next morning, and for 1 hour I thought maybe truth had finally learned how to move faster than a lie. The video showed everything they cut out the first time. It showed me removing the tag. It showed the Lamborghini starting. It showed security dumping my toolbox and Eli standing there with his sleeves pulled over his hands. It showed the guard knocking his toy into the oil pan, and it showed me wiping it clean instead of doing what my face said I wanted to do. People started sharing it with different captions then. Some called me a good father. Some called Victoria Vale a monster. Some said a billionaire finally got humbled by a working man. But the internet never gives anything clean. By lunch, just as many people were saying I had played it perfectly, that I knew how to look wounded, that bringing Eli had been the smartest part of the scam. Then Derek did what Derek does. He leaked my old dealership file. Not the real one, of course. The one they built after my wife died, full of careful words that sounded official enough to ruin a man. Unstable, erratic, emotionally compromised. There was even a note saying I had broken down during a diagnostic review, as if crying in a bathroom 3 weeks after burying your wife made you dangerous around engines. I was at the hospital with Eli when the article hit. A nurse had left her tablet on the counter, and Eli saw my name before I could turn it away. He read slower than usual, lips barely moving. Then he looked at me and asked, "Is Mom dying why they think you lie?" I sat down beside his bed because my knees had decided for me. I wanted to give him something soft, something a child could carry. But soft lies had already done enough damage. So I told him, "Some people use your worst day as a weapon when they don't have anything honest to use." He nodded like he understood too much. Across town, the Vale board started panicking because the scandal was swallowing the gala before it even happened. That afternoon, Derek went on camera outside the service center and smiled into every lens. He said if I was so sure the Lamborghini had been sabotaged, I should prove it live at the gala or disappear. I watched it once with Eli asleep beside me, and I accepted. Because if I didn't, Derek's lie would become history. The hospital gave Eli's slot away on a Tuesday afternoon while I was still carrying Derek Shaw's challenge around in my chest like a lit match. I had driven there to sign another form, another promise that money was coming, another piece of paper that let everybody pretend we were not standing on the edge of a cliff. The coordinator wouldn't look at me at first. She kept smoothing the corner of the folder with her thumb. Then she said the deposit deadline had passed, and because there was another child waiting, another family ready with payment, Eli's surgical slot had been reassigned. Reassigned. That was the word. Not taken, not lost, not sold to the first person who could hand over the right number. Reassigned. I walked back to Eli's room with my hand on the wall because the hallway had started feeling longer than it was. Eli was sitting up in bed with the blanket pulled to his waist, the little hospital tray across his lap, pretending to build a ramp out of paper cups for his toy Lamborghini. He saw my face and knew before I spoke. That boy had learned to read bad news off me the way mechanics read warning lights. "It's okay, Dad," he said, too quick. "Another kid probably needed it more." That sentence nearly took me out of the whole fight. Not Derek, not Victoria, not the viral video, not my truck being dragged away. That. My 8-year-old son trying to comfort me because adults had made him wait for the right to breathe easy. I turned toward the window and gripped the sill until the paint pressed under my fingernails. Anna must have told Victoria, because not 20 minutes later the billing office called me back downstairs. Their tone had changed. Suddenly there was good news. Suddenly, an anonymous payment source had offered to cover everything. I knew before they finished. I walked out into the parking lot and called Victoria myself. She answered on the second ring. "I told them not to use my name," she said. "I know," I said. "That's the problem." My voice came out harder than I meant, but I let it. "You still think money can clean what truth hasn't touched?" For a long second, I only heard her breathing. Then her polished voice cracked. "I don't know how to fix things without buying them." I looked back at the hospital windows, all those lit rooms stacked above me. "Then stop fixing," I said. "Start telling the truth." She was quiet so long I thought she'd hung up. Then she said her father had warned her about Derek before he died, but she ignored it because Derek made her feel in control. And right there, hearing Lionel Vale's name, I understood something. If that old man had feared Derek, he would not have left the warning with Victoria. He would have left it somewhere Derek would never think to look. Inside the Lamborghini itself, I spent half the night staring at Lionel Vale's old key photo on my kitchen table, turning it under the weak yellow light like the answer might fall out if I held it right. The tiny scratched mark near the edge was not random. I had seen marks like that before on custom Vale memory systems, the kind rich collectors used when they wanted a car to remember more than seat position and radio presets. Lionel had been old school enough to love mechanical things, but rich enough to hide secrets inside electronics. The Lamborghini had an early diagnostic recorder built into a modified valet sequence, not factory, something personal. Something a man like Lionel would build if he wanted to leave a voice note where lawyers, board members, and smiling thieves would never think to search. And that cheap $4 tag suddenly made more sense than ever. It had not just blocked the key signal, it had kept the car from recognizing the original sequence, which meant it had kept Lionel's final message buried. Victoria let me into the Lamborghini the next afternoon, but not freely. 2 security guards stood behind me, and Anna watched from near the lift with her hands locked around her tablet. Derek stood in the doorway, trying to look bored and not quite managing it. That was new. Men like Derek only get quiet when the ground under them starts moving. Victoria handed me the key without a word. Her face was still polished, but her thumb rubbed the place where Lionel's mark showed in the photo, over and over, like she was trying to touch her father through paper. I sat in the driver's seat, closed the door halfway, and followed the sequence from the mark. Key in, brake down, valet mode, left paddle twice, headlight switch once, ignition half turn. The dash flickered, died, then came back with a soft click from somewhere behind the console. For a second, nothing happened. Then the speakers crackled and Lionel Vale's voice filled the car, thin with age but clear enough to make Victoria grab the edge of the open door. "Viv," he said, and she stopped breathing like a daughter, not a CEO. "If you're hearing this, then I was right to worry. Don't trust the men who smile too quickly around your chair. They will call it protection, they will call it loyalty, but they are not protecting you. They are protecting what they took." Victoria covered her mouth. Anna's eyes shot to Derek. The message kept going. "Start with Derek shh." Then the sound cut off so clean it felt like somebody had sliced the room in half. The screen flashed once and went dark. Derek stepped back from the doorway, and I knew. Part of the recorder had been wiped remotely. The gala did not look like an execution at first. It looked like money trying to forgive itself. Crystal lights, black dresses, men in tailored jackets standing around Lionel Vale's yellow Lamborghini like it was a saint's body under glass. Investors, reporters, donors, luxury clients, board members with careful smiles. Everybody had come to watch Victoria start her father's car and prove she still owned the room. By then, Derek had spent 2 days feeding them a different story. Caleb Mercer, desperate tow driver, sick child, public sympathy play, a grieving CEO being manipulated by a man who had been unstable once before. I heard pieces of it before I got through the doors, whispered near the valet stand by people who didn't know I was close enough to hear. Victoria's board wanted her to denounce me before I touched a microphone. They wanted her clean, me dirty, and the Lamborghini sitting between us like proof that truth belonged to whoever could afford the lighting. I almost didn't go in. I was wearing my old gray work shirt because my only suit was still folded in a garment bag at the hospital chapel, the same suit I had worn to bury Hannah, and the same one I could not put on for a room like that. The shirt was clean, but it had a faded oil shadow near the pocket that no washing ever got out. People noticed. They always notice the thing that lets them place you beneath them. A woman near the bar whispered, "That's him." And a man beside her said, "Where's the prop child?" I stopped walking. My hand closed around the phone in my pocket, and for 1 second I thought about leaving them to their beautiful trap. Then the phone buzzed. It was a video from Eli, filmed from his hospital bed, hair messy, toy Lamborghini tucked under his chin. He said, "Start it, Dad, but don't become them." I stood there with my son's voice in my ear, and I kept walking. Victoria stepped onto the stage before Derek could introduce the board's version of the truth. Her face was pale under the lights, but her voice carried. "Before this car starts," she said, "I need to say what I should have said days ago. I humiliated an honest man because arrogance felt safer than shame. I let my employees mistreat his son. I let money make me certain when I should have been decent." The room shifted. Glasses paused halfway to mouths. Reporters leaned forward. Derek's smile thinned at the edges. For one breath, truth had the room. Then Derek walked up beside her holding a folder thick with papers and said, "Miss Vale is being emotionally compromised in public." He raised the documents toward the cameras. "We have proof Mr. Mercer planted the sabotage and built this entire fraud." Security moved toward me from both sides. Victoria turned, caught between the man she had trusted and the man she had shamed, and every phone in the room lifted to watch me be taken down again. Derek didn't just wave the folder around. He opened it for the cameras like a preacher opening a Bible. "Access logs," he said. "Garage entry 2 nights before the tow call. Badge activity tied to Mr. Mercer's name, matched with exterior footage." The screen behind him changed, and there it was. A blurry shape near the service bay. My old work jacket. My name printed in a report I had never seen before. It was fake. I knew it before my eyes finished reading it. But fake things look real when they're printed on company letterhead and held by a man in a clean suit. I looked at Victoria. That was my mistake. For half a second she hesitated. Not long. Not even enough for most people to notice. But I noticed. After everything, after the yard, after Lionel's voice, after Eli's slot, she still let doubt touch her face. The cuffs hurt less than that. The police came from the side of the stage, polite and firm, the way men are when they believe they are only handling a mess somebody richer has already explained. One took my arm. Another told me not to make it harder. Donors stepped back like I carried something contagious. Phones rose all around me, little black mirrors catching my face from every angle. I heard somebody whisper, "I knew it." I heard Derek say, "Careful with him," like he cared about anyone's safety. As they walked me past the Lamborghini, I saw him standing beside it with that same small smile he had worn the day my dealership career ended. He thought the story had closed. He thought all he had to do was keep me in the right costume. Desperate man, unstable widower, father using a sick child. Somewhere across town, Eli was watching the live stream from his hospital bed. I found that out later. He didn't cry, the nurse told me. He just took the little piece of tape off his toy Lamborghini, the tape I had used to hold the wheel straight, and dropped it in the trash like he was done pretending broken things could be fixed that easily. Anna followed us outside into the cold valet circle. She looked scared enough to run and guilty enough not to. Just before they put me in the back of the police car, she pressed a small envelope into my cuffed hands. "Lionel kept this separate," she whispered. "I'm sorry I waited." The door shut before I could answer. Inside the envelope was the original cheap valet tag, the one Derek had pocketed, and a folded note in old handwriting. "This opens what they won't look inside." I stared at that $4 piece of plastic until the whole lie shifted shape. The proof wasn't in the car's computer. Derek had wiped that because he knew we'd look there. The proof was inside the cheapest thing in the room. So when the officer asked who I wanted to call, I didn't ask for a lawyer. I said, "Victoria Vale." Victoria answered on the fourth ring, but she didn't sound like the woman from the billboards anymore. There was noise behind her, people talking over each other, cameras clicking, Derek's voice trying to stay calm and failing at the edges. "Mr. Mercer," she said, and even through the police car speaker I heard the shake in it. I looked down at the cheap black tag in my cuffed hands. "Cut it open," I said. "On stage, right now." She went silent. "What?" "The $4 tag, Lionel's original one. Cut it open where everyone can see." For a second, I understood how insane it sounded. A handcuffed tow driver in the back of a patrol car asking a billionaire CEO to slice open a piece of plastic in front of donors and reporters. Victoria said, "Caleb, I can't build a public defense on a guess." Then Anna's voice came through, closer to the phone. "Do it," she said. "Miss Vale, your father kept that tag separate for a reason." There was a long rustle. Then Victoria's voice moved away from the phone, but stayed close enough for me to hear. "Bring me a knife." The room quieted in a strange, rolling wave. Somebody objected. A board member said this was absurd. Derek said her name sharply, too sharply. Then I heard metal scrape against a table. Later, I saw the footage. Victoria stood beside the ceremonial ribbon table with Lionel's tag under one hand and a silver-handled knife in the other. Her face was white, but her hands were steady. She pressed the blade into the seam of that cheap plastic shell and worked it open while 300 wealthy people watched the cheapest thing in the room become the only thing that mattered. Something tiny fell onto the white tablecloth. A storage chip no bigger than a fingernail. Anna took it with shaking fingers and plugged it into her tablet. The speakers popped once. Then Lionel Vale's voice filled the ballroom again, stronger this time, complete. He named Derek Shaw. He named 2 board members. He described the plan to weaken Victoria, discredit anyone who found the sabotage, and use the gala failure to take control of the company. Then his voice changed, lower, tired. "And if Caleb Mercer is anywhere near this when it happens, listen to him." He was the only mechanic I trusted after the old defect scandal. They blacklisted him because he told the truth, not because he failed. The room made no sound after that. Not a gasp, not a whisper. Just silence, the kind that finally belongs to the right person. Derek moved first. He closed his folder, turned like he had somewhere important to be, and headed for the side exit. The same security men who had searched my truck and watched me dragged out stepped into his path. Victoria's voice came back through the phone, but this time it wasn't shaking. "Bring Caleb Mercer back," she told the police. "The man you arrested is the only man who can finish what my father started." They brought me back through the front doors in handcuffs, and that ballroom went so quiet I could hear the metal links move when I walked. An hour earlier, those same people had lifted their phones to watch me get marched out like a thief. Now they lowered them slowly, one by one, like the screens had suddenly gotten heavy. Derek stood near the side of the stage with 2 security guards blocking his way, his clean suit still perfect, his face not. Victoria was waiting beside the Lamborghini. The police officer spoke to her first, then to someone from their legal team, and after the evidence was confirmed, Victoria stepped toward me. She didn't ask one of the officers to do it. She took the key herself, unlocked the cuffs, and held them in her hands for half a second like she needed to understand what she had allowed to happen. I rubbed my wrists once and walked past Derek without looking at him. That was harder than it sounds. There were years sitting inside that one man. My job, my name. Hannah's last months with bills stacked on the counter. Eli learning too early that truth does not always protect you fast enough. I could feel him watching me, waiting for me to turn and give him the thing he deserved. But I went straight to the Lamborghini. Anna handed me Lionel's opened tag and the little storage chip. Victoria stood close enough that I could hear her breathing. I set the tag near the key. We stored the sequence Lionel had hidden and started over from the beginning. Breakdown, valet mode, left paddle twice, headlight switch once, ignition half-turn. The dash woke clean this time. Then I turned the key, and the Lamborghini started like it had been waiting for permission, not repair. The engine filled the room, low and alive, and then Lionel Vale's full message came through the speakers. He told Victoria he loved her in the stiff way of men who learn tenderness too late. He told her he had built the company with rough hands and had spent too many years pretending polished men were safer than honest ones. Then his voice slowed, and every person in that room heard him say, "Vivian, don't build my company on men who fear honest hands." Victoria covered her mouth, but she didn't turn away. Tears ran straight down her face under the stage lights, and she let them. It wasn't the car that broke her. It was the fact that her father's last lesson had to reach her through the man she had shamed in front of his sick child. Reporters rushed forward. Board members started whispering into phones. Derek's name moved through the room like smoke, finding every corner. Microphones came toward me, and for one perfect second, I had it all. The room that laughed, the man who ruined me, the cameras, the truth. I could have taken Derek apart word by word and enjoyed every breath of it. Instead, I looked at him for the first time and said, "Tell the truth about the defect, all of it. Every family you put at risk." Victoria looked at me in front of all those cameras and asked the question everyone in that room had been waiting to hear. "What do you want, Mr. Mercer?" You could feel the money leaning forward. Reporters raised their microphones. Board members stopped whispering. Derek stood there with his face drained flat, and for the first time since I had known him, he did not look like a man in control of the room. Everybody expected a number. Maybe they thought I'd say enough to buy back my truck, enough to save my house, enough to cover Eli's surgery and every bill that had been sitting on my kitchen table like a second family. And I won't lie to you, I thought about all of it. I thought about my wrecker being chained and dragged away while my boy stood on the porch in his socks. I thought about Eli's surgery slot being given to another child because I couldn't move money fast enough. I thought about the suit I couldn't wear because it still smelled, in my mind anyway, like the chapel where I buried Hannah. And I thought about every laugh that landed on my son while he tried to hide his hospital bracelet under his sleeve. But when I opened my mouth, revenge did not come out. "I want the old defect case reopened," I said. "All of it. Every unsafe car recalled, every customer notified, every worker who got silenced cleared by name, and every family Derek and those board members put at risk compensated publicly, not quietly." The room shifted again, because that wasn't the answer they had prepared themselves for. Victoria looked at her board, and I saw them start to move toward her, already thinking about liability, stock price, public image, all the words rich people hide behind when truth gets expensive. She didn't let them reach her. She took Anna's tablet, opened a company order right there on stage, and signed it while the cameras watched. Then she looked at me and said, "Done." I accepted payment, too, because dignity is not the same thing as pretending honest work should be free. But it went through a contract, clean and written, for the diagnostic work and the damage done to my business. Not hush money, not pity money, not revenge money. The difference matters when you have a child watching what kind of man you become after the world gives you a chance to be cruel. Victoria called the hospital herself that night, but not the way she had tried before. She didn't hide her name or buy silence through a side door. She funded an emergency surgery grant in Eli's name for families trapped in insurance delays, and Eli's procedure was scheduled under that fund like any other child would be helped after him. When I saw him after surgery, small under the blanket, breathing without fighting every breath, the Lamborghini stopped mattering so completely it almost felt strange that it had ever mattered at all. Victoria came to see him 2 days later without cameras, wearing plain clothes and holding no check. She sat beside his bed and said to him first, "I should never have made you watch grown people make your father small." Eli looked at her for a long second, then handed her his repaired toy Lamborghini, like forgiveness was something children still knew how to try. Months later, after my name was cleared and my truck was back, I opened a small diagnostic shop on a quiet road outside Charlotte. On opening morning, Eli placed that toy Lamborghini on the counter beside Lionel Vale's cut-open $4 tag. The cheapest thing in the room had carried the truth everyone expensive had missed.